Hey, folks, and welcome. Here you are. Here we are. We're back in the studio, which means we're back from our gallivanting tour all around Europe. Pops and I. We didn't post a video of the very last day of the tour. To be quite honest, I think we were both a little burnt out. We needed some time to reflect, and we needed some time to navigate through Germany as we weren't on the tour anymore. So it was we were up to our own devices to get around and to and from the airport and all that other stuff. So today's show, we're going to recap the last day of the tour and then have whatever discussion we want about the tour and the trip as a whole. So the last day, Dad, was the Eagle's Nest. Yeah.
Yes, it was.
And so it was a pretty interesting day. I thought it was to be quite honest, it was a long ride, and there was a lot of anticipation that I had about going up to the Eagle's Nest. You read a lot about it, you see a lot of pictures, and you hear a lot of people talk about it. So I was pretty pumped. I think you were too, weren't you? Like that was one of the highlights for you.
It was one of the highlights, being able to get up as high as we were, and the scenery and the view from the top of the Eagle's Nest. It was unbelievable.
Yeah, it was quite a sight. It's like a picture. And so it wasn't very warm. In fact, I think it had been raining earlier that day. And as we talked about in the video before we went up there, the process, right? So the process is, it took us, what was it, 2-3 hours to get?
Yes. And then once we got to the base of the mountain, we had to take a different bus up the hill, up the mountain to the Eagle's Nest. And it was busy. There was a lot of people. And, but by the time we got up there, the weather changed a couple of different times. We had some rain, we had some wind, we had some sleet, and then we had some rain again. The sky kind of cleared up, and then it clouded up again.
Very fast too. I think we were only up there, for like 40 minutes total, maybe an hour.
At that, maybe an hour.
But you're right. We got off the elevator. We stepped outside onto the veranda, if you will, and you couldn't see a damn thing. You could see the like barrier wall, but you couldn't see anything. It was complete whiteout, which also was a pretty interesting experience. I've never like stood in the middle of a cloud at the top of a mountain, so that was kind of cool to just like feel that. It feels a little bit different, you can kind of feel the humidity, I guess, maybe, of the cloud.
Yes. The other part too is that with the weather changing so quickly, it got cold.
Yeah.
I hadn't been in that kind of cold weather since I left Minnesota.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll tell you, at one point I was thinking to myself, holy crap, it is pretty damn cold. I mean, it's not cold compared to Minnesota, but we weren't prepared for it, right? I mean, I was just in a hoodie. I think you had a light jacket on.
Correct.
So you weren't ready for, like, we needed gloves, and a stocking cap probably would have been cool. Would have made it a little more comfortable, a heavier coat. And it's probably our fault, just because we didn't prepare or do enough research to prepare, which seems to be a common theme of this trip that I had. I didn't really prepare appropriately, but it all worked out. I think that we weren't like super ill prepared. But let's talk about the history of the place, Dad. I mean, I don't know that we learned a ton about why it was built and how it was built. And also, we didn't make it through the museum because we spent too much time up at the top just kind of staring out over the world. It felt like you could see the whole world from up there.
Absolutely. And we took a lot of pictures, but I can tell you, pictures does not do service to the view that we had up there.
Yeah.
There is nothing like that view up there compared to other places that I've been. And being up in the area of the Bavarian Alps, that alone was an amazing thing to be.
Yeah. Do you remember, Dad, the movie The Sound of Music?
Yes.
And Heidi?
Yeah.
And like all those views when they were tramping through the Edelweiss flowers and all this other shit. And you look at it and you're like, man, that's a soundstage.
Mm-hmm.
But when you get up there, it's not a soundstage. I mean, if they said that they filmed it in the mountains in Bavaria or Austria or whatever, the real view in person does look like a soundstage. It looks like a painting. It looks like a doctored picture. Well, I've been high up in the mountains before, you know, in the Rockies and things like that here in America. What was the other place? My wife and the kids, we went to Glacier National Park, and you go up to the Road of the Sun, and you get to the top and you look out and you're like, holy shit, this is an amazing view, which is great, but it doesn't really hold a candle to the views we had up there.
Right. And what was so interesting too is when we got to the document center down where we had to catch the smaller buses to get up to the nest, if you looked up the mountain and you saw this little tiny shack, you could hardly see it. That's the view that we had looking from down below. And the bus ride took us 15 minutes to get from point A to point B.
Yeah, switchbacks and all that stuff. And, you know, I'll tell you one thing that I thought about when we were coming down from there. So before we get to that, when you go up, you take these smaller buses. They're like regular city buses, but they were smaller compared to the coach that we were on for the whole week. And these buses they're electric. They're specially designed to have this crazy, insane, tight turning radius. They're quick. And then you get up there and you walk down the big, long tunnel, which I remember from learning prior to being there that this was the tunnel that, you know, when Hitler would go there, they would drive him down the tunnel. And then you get out at the end of the tunnel and you go into this another little room and you get into the golden elevator room, right? And then there's people piled in this tunnel waiting in line to ride up the golden elevator, which brings you to the center of the actual eagle's nest. And they cramp you in there like sardines, and you know, you're nut to butt with somebody you've never seen or known before, but nobody gives a shit because you're in this golden elevator going up to the top of a mountain. It's just it's a very surreal experience if you're not expecting some of these things. And the other thing that came to my mind was that through all of this treachery and all of this evil and all of these things that Hitler and his Nazi party did to the world, this place is now like people are bringing their families there and they're paying a bunch of money to go up to the top and see this, and they're enjoying it. And I don't think that when all of this was put together that they ever thought, well, certainly they never thought, well, this will be a tourist attraction someday and people are going to love coming here and they're going to take pictures, and who knows, people probably get engaged and asked to be married and all kinds of shit up there. But the reason and the purpose it was built is completely something different, which I think is pretty ironic.
Well, even though the fact that it was Hitler's place, he very seldom spent any large amount of time there.
Mm-hmm.
He was hardly ever there.
Yeah, I think they said he went there, what, like 6 times only?
I believe so, 4 to 6 times. And for us being up there, I was so in tune with the view and the sight. I didn't even get a chance to go inside. I was just so amazed from being out and seeing the view. That was just breathtaking. I didn't want to go inside. I just loved being where I was at, be able to look over the mountains and just see the beauty.
Well, yeah, and if you keep so when you exit the building, you can take the trail up. It's probably another, what do you think it was, another 50 feet in elevation?
Yeah.
And then there's this big signboard. Well, if you look at the map of the mountain that the eagle's nest sits on, there's 4 or 5 different walking trails. I mean, you can if you're so inclined, you can go up there and you can go on a whole week's long hike and not see the same thing, you know. And then there's cable cars and there's other ways to get back to where you started. And also, if you don't want to take a bus and you are a go-getter, you can hike from the base of the center where you buy tickets. So you got to buy tickets, and your ride up is scheduled, your ride down is scheduled. If you miss your bus, well, then you're catching it when there's an open seat, or you're walking down. So there's a lot of different ways to be up there and see what the Bavarian Alps has to offer outside of being at the Eagle's Nest. And I agree. I didn't go inside. I didn't even go to use the bathroom, for Pete's sake. We stood out there for quite a while. I got so many pictures up there. I think 19 of them are the same picture, just a little bit different angle.
Yeah.
So what did you think, Dad, about the rest of the area? So we went down. Of course, it was our time to go up and spend some time up there, and then we had to go down and catch the bus at the bottom. But then just like the whole feel of the place, because you start to think about, like, this road up here is treacherous, probably in the winter for sure. In fact, I think they said they close it down in the winter, but people live around there. But there's a big museum. We ate in this cafe. We ate lunch in this cafe, and you look out in this huge windows, and there's more mountains, and you're already high at the base of the nest. You're already high up in the hills. So what did you think about, like, the area? And if you could put yourself into the mindset of a military leader, I mean, not necessarily just Hitler, but a military leader, and being up in that place, did you think it was do you think it was a good spot for them to be?
Yes, but when I was up there, I was putting myself in the position how the troops felt when they got there.
Mhm.
Through the whole time that I was there, that was what was going through my mind, thinking of what they were doing and how they got there. And that was for the whole trip, the whole tour, just living the footprints of Easy Company.
Yeah, I suppose that's a good point too. I mean, I probably should have asked you that. We should talk about that. What do you think was going through the heads of those dudes when they were at the base of that mountain? You can, like you said, from the bottom, you can see it. It's just a little tiny speck at the top. And being a soldier, an infantry soldier, looking up that mountain and going, that's where we're going?
Right.
Holy shit. And of course, they had vehicles and tanks, but not everybody got a ride, right? It's not, doesn't give you any strategic advantage to take 5 deuce and a halfs that sound like tanks up a road. They're going to hear you and see you coming. I bet that was a pretty intimidating sight for those guys.
I agree. And being a foot soldier, that would have been a long haul to make.
Yeah, I agree. But maybe very motivating, because they knew when we get up there and we take this place, theoretically, I mean, maybe they knew, maybe they didn't know that they were going to be going home. Like, this was our last mission, and we're going to be out of here. The war should be over. This is Hitler's last stand, I think, is what they thought, even though Hitler wasn't there. They didn't know that at the time.
Correct. But also remember that the war in the Pacific was still continuing.
It was raging on. Yeah.
It was still going on. And unfortunately, some of those soldiers that made it to the Eagle's Nest and the war ended in Europe, there was quite a few of them that ended up having to go to the Pacific and finish that campaign.
Yeah, that's true. And if you watch the show, you do see that part at the end in the last episode when they're in a formation. The war has come to an end or whatever. I think they did a drawing, and one guy got to go home, and then the commander, I forget his name, he was a guy that allegedly, or maybe not allegedly anymore, would hand out cigarettes to the Germans, and then when they lit them up, he'd shoot them. He was the commander at the end, and he told them, tomorrow we start training to go to war. And then they pan through all the soldiers, and the looks on their faces are like, man, you got to be fucking kidding me.
Yeah. There were some of those troops, those soldiers didn't have enough credits to go home after the European campaign. And as the war continued on in the Pacific, they had to feed that campaign.
Yeah, that's right. Well, okay. So, and then after that, we had lunch, and we took the bus back to the hotel in Munich, and that was essentially the end of our Band of Brothers tour. We had a group dinner with everybody, and then we kind of said our goodbyes and stuff like that, because very early the next morning, many people were going to the airport to fly home. We stayed one extra day in Munich to kind of just get our bearings, see a little bit of something, and organize our bags. I bought a lot of crap, so I had to repack my bags. So yeah, I mean, the tour as a whole, Dad, how would you describe it? Because when you go home, back to Arizona, you know, a lot of people are going to ask you, so what'd you think? How'd it go? What was your most favorite part? And blah, blah, blah. So if you have to take 3 minutes, right, and describe to a couple of your bowling buddies what this trip meant to you and what it was like, what would you say? What are you going to say to them?
Well, every piece of this tour was very meaningful for me because of the fact that it was history related. I was a big history buff going through school, and the whole military thing, the beaches of Normandy, the cemeteries were very moving. I just could not get over the fact that I was here. And this was 3 years in the making for me.
Yeah.
This was my bucket list. The top of it was the beaches of Normandy and being able to follow the band of brothers. So every piece of this is I'm going to have a great time explaining to some of my friends back in the desert how I felt. There was some good times. There was some somber times. There was times where I felt, I don't know, not hatred, but the uneasy feeling, kind of mad, upset. There was all kinds of different emotions, especially when we went to the camp and the
Dachau.
cemeteries, to be able to see these heroes laid to rest. I did not know that Theodore Roosevelt Jr. is buried at the cemetery in Normandy.
I didn't either.
And that was interesting. And he stormed the beaches himself.
Yeah.
And
Talk about leadership. Hey.
he took right behind after his father's footsteps, the president of the United States, back in the day. So to see General Patton's gravestone in the American Cemetery in Luxembourg just gave me chills just to stand, in front of that, to see that. It was just an amazing feeling of history for me.
Outside of the fact that it was cold as hell and rainy.
Yeah, we got soaked, but
But it was
other
worth
than
it.
that,
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to be there again, maybe. I would agree. I think that the emotional roller coaster of that 11 days that we spent going through all these places and seeing all these things, and then also hearing all these personal stories from the people that were guiding us. You know, we had the older fella in Bastogne who lived through the Nazis occupying Bastogne twice, and then living also through the Americans liberating Bastogne twice, and then the whole Battle of the Bulge, and then everything to come after, and rebuilding, and just all of that stuff. It's a whole different ball of wax when you're there. And sometimes you feel, I don't know about you, Dad, but sometimes I felt like, man, maybe I'm not doing enough to get the full experience. Maybe I'm not immersed enough. Maybe I'm not paying enough attention. Maybe I'm not reading enough of the things that we come across. And maybe I'm not touching enough of it to really try to understand and feel. But I think after it was all over, it's taken me a couple days. I think I've been pretty quiet and somber a little bit the last few days, just trying to to digest all of it.
well, I have a feeling similar to that. The feeling of being able to do this tour with you, knowing that you are a veteran and you know what it is. You've been in war. You know what it took to survive and to sustain all the things that you had to just to stay alive, and to see what had happened and transpired during all those times. For example, when we were in the forest and
In Bastogne.
Bastogne,
Yeah.
and just walking through those woods, I could feel there was a spirit or something. There is an energy of what took place there 80 years ago.
Sure.
Walking in the woods, stepping in those foxholes, and just thinking it was wintertime when the war was going on for those troops. And it was cold. They didn't have winter. They were low on ammo. All of those things were going through my head, and it it was just a powerful feeling.
I think that you could tell. I don't think that anybody in our tour group was like disrespectful or unattentive or anything. I think like everybody, I think we had a really good group of people. I think everybody was super engaged, and at least everyone has their own reasons for going. We met a lot of really nice people. There wasn't anybody that I had an uneasy feeling about. I think it was pretty cool. But I think that these types of experiences, they hit everybody a little bit differently. And I think for veterans in particular, especially combat veterans, it's a little bit more complex, because I have this feeling and this thought that people who have never, what's a good way to put it so I don't sound like an asshole? People who have never had to fight for their lives for freedom really understand what it's like to be there and have this appreciation for it. And I think, not that it's negative in any means, because not everybody serves, not everybody can, but those men and women who have shed blood, sweat, and tears, or had to drag their dead buddies out of a combat zone, these types of things hit a little bit different, because I was never there. I didn't fight in World War II, but I did at one point in my life wear a uniform, and I did go to combat, and I did have to fight for, and you can call the war in Iraq and Afghanistan whatever you want, but for us that were there fighting it, it was about survival, and it was about accomplishing the mission. Even if the mission was a lie and it was bullshit, however you feel about it is a whole different conversation. But when you're there in these places where these men fought in World War II, it's just a little bit different, I think. And long story short, I believe that if you've never had to fight and write that check for your life, for your freedom as well as everyone else's, you can't really understand it as much. I mean, it could certainly hit you. I mean, because everybody had those moments, and I think you could see it or hear it. Everyone had those moments where they're like, whoa, holy shit, no way. I can't believe that happened. We all had that. So I don't think that anybody was excluded from that, but I just think it's different for veterans, and also maybe the cops, the police officers that were on the tour, if they've ever been in a situation on the street or in the course of their duties that it was life or death, or you got shot at, or you in a like a horrible car accident, or and then all the shit you have to see: mangled bodies, dead people, overdoses, folks are getting their asses whipped by their husbands or wives, or kids abused, whatever it is. All of those things hit you different.
I agree totally. And being able to be with the group that we were with, we all fell in on that category. We did have retired police officers, we did have veterans, and we did have people that worked as first responders in other disciplines. It was just a great group of people. Not only that, but every single tour guide that we had for the tour, top notch. They knew everything. They were so knowledgeable on every piece of that tour, from the landing, the invasion on the beaches of Normandy, to Bastogne, the Luxembourg, the death camp. I mean, they were so knowledgeable, and I'm taking a lot of information from these folks, and I learned a lot of what happened during that time in World War II.
Good. Yeah. Okay, so out of all the days, so let's just run down it quick. I have a list here because I don't want to forget. So the first day of the tour, we did Utah Beach, Sainte-Mère-Église. There was a airborne museum. Day 2, we did Omaha Beach. We did Pointe du Hoc. We do Long Samara that day. I think we did.
Yes.
And then we also did the cemetery, the American cemetery at Omaha Beach. And then after that, the next day we did Gold Beach, Juno Beach, Sword Beach, Pegasus Bridge. Well, that was a long day. We saw a lot of stuff. And then after that, let's see, I got it all right here. We did the Battle of the Bulge. So we did the Ardennes Forest where the foxholes are. We did the walking tour through Bastogne. We did the museum, the monument. There's another airborne museum right there in Bastogne. which was really good. Very well done. It was awesome. We got a picture outside of some archway in this old house. And so we can put our picture next to the picture where Hitler stood when he was in Bastogne before the start of the war, to come up with a battle plan. I'd like to know a little bit more about that. Why was he there before the war started? But that's for another day. And then we made our way to Luxembourg. And that day we went to the American military cemetery in Luxembourg, where General Patton is buried. We also did a walking tour of Luxembourg City and had lunch and froze our asses off because it was cold and rainy there also. And Pops and I weren't the best prepared. Again, the next day after that, we did the Dachau, the concentration camp memorial. And we saw the camp, we saw the barracks, we saw the administrative building, we saw the cells, we saw the crematorium where they burned all the bodies, the gas chamber. We also saw all the monuments there they have. Like I think we said it in the vlog for that day. There's a Lutheran church, there's Christian and Catholic things there. There's a monument. There's also, what do they call it? A convent? Yeah, full of nuns that live there. They never leave, apparently. Mm-hmm. And then after that was the Eagle's Nest. And that was kind of all the stops we made. And then, of course, then there are travel days. So we had to go from Normandy to Bastogne to Luxembourg to Munich. So there's some travel days in there as well. If you had to, Dad, pick one thing, like if your wife called you tomorrow and was like, hey, I want you to take me to see the one best thing from your tour, where would you go?
I would go to Bastogne and explain the strategy behind the Battle of the Bulge and all the hardships the American soldiers had to get through that battle. But then I also thought about the cemetery at Normandy. If the weather would have been nice, I could have been there for hours.
Yeah.
Did not get a chance to see all the things there. Those two places, and then the beaches, especially.
Yeah, so you can't just pick one.
I can't just pick one. Utah Beach, when those guys came ashore, and then so all of those, and then all the other places that we had gone to, the churches and some of the monuments that have some significance of the war itself, and all these stories that focused around the places that we did go see. That was probably one of the most neatest things, because all the tour guides had all these stories. They were stories within a story. And that's what made this trip and this tour so amazing.
Yeah. It's a tough ask. I think if my wife asked me, it would definitely have to be Omaha Beach. And what I would argue is that Omaha Beach and the cemetery are probably the same thing, right? But there's also places that, I think that we were fortunate to see because they won't be around forever. Like Pointe du Hoc, for example, the focal point on the point of the beach was shaved in half and fell into the ocean. So like those things are deteriorating, erosion's taken over. After all, it's the English Channel, right? And when the water comes in, and the weather's not always great. So like these places are going to erode away and they're going to go away. They're doing a very good job, I think, all over Europe and in these places where these battles and wars happened, at preserving them and trying to fence them off. And that's probably pretty shitty that they charge admission for everything, but it's also a way to keep from masses amounts of people touching them and walking on them and trying to chip away parts so they can bring it with them and things like that. And so just preserving it so that it can be, I don't want to say enjoyed, consumed and digested by as many people as possible, to ensure that these types of things never happen again, so that we know what happened.
Well, you remember that they talked about, one thing that I didn't realize is the fact that if you're a German national, and between the time that you were born to your 18th birthday, you have to understand what the Holocaust was. You have to be educated as to what happened during that particular time in history. You have to be able to spend time at one of the concentration camps or the museums through your educational process by the time that you're 18 years old. And I think that needs to happen because the story needs to be told at time and time again. And as generations continue to go, that story still needs to be told.
There were two American paratrooper medics that hunkered down in a church not too far from Utah Beach. I want to say that one guy's name was Anthony. I'm not
I
even going to
can't
try.
remember.
I think his last name was Anthony, maybe. But anyway, they were the medics, and they had decreed that inside the walls of this little tiny church in this little tiny town where there's about 8 houses, we're going to treat the wounded. And this is a safe zone, neutral ground, Switzerland, if you will. So they treated both German soldiers and American soldiers and kept them alive. And when you walk through there and hear the stories, even the stained glass windows that they put in this church now all have First Airborne insignia. They have a picture of a paratrooper and a medic, and so they paid homage to these medics. And then when you walk through, it's not very big, the blood is still on the pews. The pews in the church are still there from 81 years ago. And so like these are all efforts to have this stuff here for people to see, to hear the stories, to digest it and remember, and always remember what happened. And so like these are the types of things I'm saying, like they are committed to telling the story and teaching the world what happened.
Correct. And along those lines, when it comes to the upkeep of all of these monuments in places, the American government is involved in making sure that those stories do stay alive too, because they are making it possible to keep these places up and running. So it's important that we understand that not only is it Europe's responsibility, it's also our responsibility here in America to see to it that we keep the stories alive of what happened to our heroes, our fallen heroes over there in Europe.
Everybody has a stake. The Canadians, they take care of Juno Beach. They have their museum there. They have their youth there teaching tourists about what the Canadians did on D-Day at the beach and what they did as they moved through Europe. The Brits are there. They have Gold Beach and Sword Beach and Pegasus Bridge. They did a whole ton of shit in the war. And I think I said this in one of the videos we did throughout the tour. I don't think I've ever given the Brits enough credit because they did a lot of cool shit. They were very precise. They seemed to be very well organized. Like Pegasus Bridge, for example. They had to land these gliders within 50 meters of the bridge. They were told in order to have a strategic advantage to take the bridge, which was not negotiable. This bridge we must have. And these dudes, without any avionics in the glider, maybe a map and a protractor and a compass and a flashlight with a red lens and a lot of rehearsal, landed this thing 48 meters from the bridge. So they didn't hit their 50. They got closer. They lost one guy in the skirmish to take the bridge, although the bridge wasn't very well defended by the Germans. They probably had no idea that they were coming. And so things like that. And you're right, Dad, everybody who fought there and sent soldiers also have taken on the responsibility to make sure the stories get told properly and to make sure that people have the ability to come see it and learn and hear the stories.
Correct.
Which I thought is pretty amazing. And like I said many times, I think that we as Americans in general have a responsibility to learn and to feel it and to go there and see it if you have the means and you're willing. I just think it should be on everybody's bucket list, in my opinion.
Well, sure, definitely was on mine.
Well, good. I'm glad we could check that off.
And no greater person to do this tour with you.
Yeah, it was great. It was good to spend time together like that.
Right.
I agree.
So it was a wonderful time.
It was long. I'll tell you one thing. It was long. And as much as I enjoyed it, it was really nice to get home.
Correct.
and
Yeah.
you'll be there tomorrow. You'll be home tomorrow, so you'll know the feeling.
Yeah. Well, it's been over a month that I've been away from home
Yeah,
during
your
this
boat
trip.
misses you.
Yeah.
Your boat, and I'm sure your wife misses you too, but your boat for sure misses you.
Yeah. Exactly.
And so I guess the only other thing really to talk about is, I would like to take a minute and just thank all of the people. Ben, our tour guide, Tomasz, who was our driver, was amazing. The whole process. Here's my shameless plug for the tour company. The Beaches of Normandy tours. If you are looking for a place to guide you through this experience, I 100,000% recommend Beaches of Normandy tours. It's organized. The places that they reserve you to stay are pretty nice. I mean, you're not paying for 5 and 6 star hotels, but they're nice. They're accommodating. The food for the most part is pretty good. I learned I'm not a big fan of duck on this trip, but when you're in a place, you eat what they eat, and so it's good to be able to immerse yourself and
Different cultures.
different cultures and have the cuisine and see the sights and integrate with the people as much as you can. Communication barriers weren't all that horrible. Most people spoke a little bit of English, and you can kind of through hand gestures and stuff like that get what you need. Did you, Dad? I didn't see or feel any of this, but I was told before we left that sometimes there's Europeans, especially French folks, who don't really like Americans.
I didn't see none of that.
I didn't either.
Matter of fact, almost every place that we went to, all the 5 countries that we went to, I saw a bunch of American flags everywhere.
Everywhere. Yeah.
Austria, Germany, Belgium, Luxembourg, they were everywhere.
Yeah. And people were really nice. And I guess if they didn't like us or they thought we were dumbass tourists or whatever, they didn't say nothing. Didn't really see anybody looking out the side of their face at us, like, what the hell are you guys doing here?
Mm-hmm.
So I thought it was great. I don't think that you commit to going on these types of tours and doing these types of things to get the best hotel accommodations and Michelin star cuisines. I think you go to take in the sights and to learn the stories and see where it all happened and feel it and be immersed in that part of it. And so I think they did an amazing job. And then whoever's in charge over there at Beaches of Normandy, I think Ben is probably due for a promotion. Maybe he did an amazing job, and he was very accommodating and pretty patient guy,
Very patient.
if I have to say.
Yeah, they all did an amazing job. Even the places that we were housed in, the hotels,
Mm-hmm.
they were, they were, they were awesome. So
Yeah, I got no complaints.
none whatsoever.
So I just want to say thank you to Beaches of Normandy. Money well spent. I don't regret one dime that I spent on this trip with you, Dad. And so yeah. And anything else that you wanna put in and add? You want to say hello to anybody or anything like that?
I'll give a shout out to my military buddies, Don Hayes here in the Twin Cities, and also Mr. Bauer, Ken Bauer, also a Vietnam vet. He has an incredible story.
Hopefully we can get that story.
Yeah. He's a Vietnam vet, and he's back in Havasu, and get a chance to check in with him periodically. And then all the other friends and neighbors that knew that I was going on this trip, they're waiting for me to come home and tell the story because they're all kind of anticipating that to happen. I've already sent pictures home to some of these individuals. And so it's going to be great being able to get home to share the experience that you and I had over in.
Yep, I agree. So yeah, I think that's about it, right? I think that this was, for me, it was a life altering experience. One, to do this and take all this in with my father, but also being a veteran of the United States military, being interested in this part of history for a long time in my life, and watching the movies and seeing the documentaries and reading some of the books. I'm not a huge reader, but I have read some. I think that it was just an amazing experience to be able to be there, and the negative emotions that I felt, I think I expected to feel, and I needed to feel that. I don't know that anybody can really imagine, even if you have been in combat, what it would be like to be on that landing craft approaching that beach at 20 years old, and you barely got fur on your nuts. And here you are invading France to fight the Germans. And then on your way there, watching all of your comrades getting mowed down, and the only thing that you can do is put one foot in front of the other and hope that you don't catch the next bullet. And then not only that, but then have to continue to fight for 2 years. And how do you deal with all of that? And how do you move forward? And it was very apparent throughout the tour, as well as all the things you read, see, and hear, that it's about the guy next to you. And I think that that's how they got through. And I think that if you still to this day see videos and stuff of these World War II vets who go back to Normandy or go back to Bastogne or go back to wherever they fought, they end up doing it together. And if not, they know where each other are. If they're still alive, they keep track of each other. They check in, they talk, and they're still a family after 80 years. So it was just an amazing, life altering. And then standing in those cemeteries and then also thinking about the same thing, like, man, how many of these guys never got to drive a car? How many of these guys never got to get married and have children or own a business or have a real big boy job or see to their parents when their parents age? How many parents had to bury their children? It's just there's a lot of things that I think about after doing all this, and it just gives me a profound sense of appreciation for what was done for us and for the world, to be honest. So this wraps up our series of Band of Brother tour vlogs. So this will be the last video on the playlist. So I hope that you guys enjoyed it, and please like, subscribe if you haven't, leave comments, ask questions, anything like that. We here at 3 Clicks love the participation that we get from our audience, even though our audience isn't too massive yet, but we're hoping to grow that. So share with us, ask questions, comment, participate. Even if it's a negative comment, we still love you. Pops, anything else before we go?
Thank you, Rich. Thank you for taking this trip with me.
Absolutely.
It was making of a lifetime for me.
Money well spent. Okay, so that's it. Beaches of Normandy tours. You guys rock. Dad, you rock. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for following along with us. And we'll see you again with regularly scheduled programming starting next week. All right, see you later.
Bye.